We've talked to you a few different times on the show. It's nice to have you right here in person.
In person, yeah. They let me across the border.
That's pretty nice too, huh?
Yeah.
So they didn't look at your background or anything when you tried to get in?
It was very easy. I think the U.S. border guy, he must have been a fisherman too. I said, I'm going to the fishing show. He's like, next.
Next,
nice.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Next guy. Cool. We wanted to bring you in today. I mean, obviously, we had Doug here from Fish USA there.
Yeah.
You got some stuff going on too, ProjectSalmon.ca. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, for some people know, some people don't know. Like obviously I fish out of Toronto right now, but I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia for a few years. And, when I lived out there, I was amazed that I could go, forget about even the tackle store. I can go to a hardware store and I'd see a wall of salmon gear, like as big as you can imagine. And then I moved back to Toronto and honestly, I was disappointed. I couldn't find the stuff I wanted as a fisherman. Very, very peaky when it came to tackle and in stock. And so I started probably back in 2015 doing a lot of custom tackle for mainly charter captains, mainly tournament guys. And then over time, it just became something. And it became something to the point where I couldn't keep up through Facebook message and those types of pieces. So in February, actually, it's basically 1 year next weekend, I launched ProjectSalmon.ca, which really it's my tackle line where I started out doing, call it custom painted flashers, in a few different types, an 8-inch fin flasher. I've also got the 10-inch hot fish, which is a Canadian flasher in a fish shape, but 10-inch with a little bit more of an aggressive action. And then from there, really got into the bait heads, and just recently brought out, I've got divers, I've got anchovy heads, and really starting to build out into, I call it the Canadian salmon angler's dream, where you can really go A to Z, almost everything you need. So anchovy heads, beads, terminal tackle, a one-stop shop. I love the Fish USA site, but it's we get this border in the way. We got exchange rates and those types of things. So trying to really build something for the Canadians. What's been interesting though, for those that may not know, the Canadian dollar is actually really weak right now. So I'm actually finding I'm doing a lot of sales to the United States because it's a good price. The US dollar is worth $1.40 Canadian right now. So it's funny how it works out. Yeah, I'm doing lots of Canadian sales, but I'm actually shipping quite a lot across the border. But that's really where Project Salmon started. The other thing though is it was about trying to make sure they had patterns that worked, right? So the patterns I sell are the patterns I'll run on my charter boat. They're the patterns that other captains are using. The patterns that the tournament guys are buying. I don't want to have 300, 400 different SKUs that sit there. It's about having 50, 60 patterns that, frankly, I can have complete confidence in and will feel and stand behind. So yeah, that's what Project Salmon's all about.
Very cool. How do you come up with this stuff, Marc? I know you're fishing. That's going to be your answer. I fish them, but so does that mean a bunch of them end up on the scrap heap? I mean, you got to be a guy that's going to go out and just try different things. How does that work? How does that development process work?
So yeah, some of them don't work, and the good news is they don't end up on the scrap heap. You pull the tape off and you start over.
Okay.
When you've got all the machinery and the paint to do that. I think the one thing I try to do, and with a lot of my tackle that I'm making for people, I try to make sure it's something that I believe can, call it last the day. So if someone goes to my website, they'll notice a lot of my patterns. They've got UV and they've got glow. So I try to go for the best of both worlds. I like to argue maybe it's I have a hard time making decisions. So I want something that works throughout the day. But that's a big part of what I try to do. But yeah, it is a lot of trial and error. I think like many of us, we love the color green. So that's a great color on Lake Ontario. But from there, really trying to mix and match and see what works. A lot of variations too. So I may have a pattern I love, and then I'll do it in I'll do it in black, then I'll do it in green, and then I'll bring an orange one together. And that's some of the things I think I've learned over the years from fishing on Lake Ontario, but also when I fished out west. It's the same fish. So we're very infatuated with green on Lake Ontario. So are the guys out on the west coast. But we were using a lot more orange, a lot more pink to catch Chinook or kings out there. So starting to bring some of those colors in, and they work.
Do you make your friends order a minimum quantity when they come up and say, hey, can you do this for me, Marc? I want a little of this, I want a little of this. And so is it like no onesies. You need
No
six,
onesies,
tell
yeah.
Me, tell me what you
I can't. So you know what? When I do the, so it's interesting.
They might be telling me that something too.
It's interesting. So when I do the custom stuff now, that's not on my website. Typically, it's like half a dozen, or or preferably a dozen, because it takes time. I can't be cutting tapes and painting ones and twos, let alone trying to mix the clear coat and such. But that's to answer your question. That's also part of the developmental process, right? When you're working with all this network, and they know, like, if Pete asked me for something custom for Pete, I'm not going to sell it to everybody, but over time you might take something you learned on this flasher and this flasher, and you blend it together, right? So yeah, I typically do 6+ when I do the custom. But the other thing I find I do a lot of, so I know on the Canadian side we love the White Lightning. That is a staple paddle for us on the Canadian side. I'll take the White Lightning and I'll then blend that with like a UV Super Frog. So now you've got the UV Frog on one side, you got the White Lightning on the other side. So that's a lot of what I've been doing with call it Project Salmon. It's a bit of a mashup, right? Where I take two patterns and bring them together and put them into one.
And what do you see when you use that, take it out? Do you feel like you really do have the best of both worlds, or is it like one of those things where you take like a steak and you put peanut butter on it?
That's just wrong.
This doesn't really work. So
yeah, I'm dead against putting peanut butter on a steak. So I would never do that to salmon tackle either. Right. So no, not everything's going to work, right? Sometimes you look at something and say, is it truly better? You got to let the fish decide. The other joke, and some tackle manufacturers might not like me saying this, but before you catch the fish, you got to catch the angler, right? And that's the colors, right? That's the patterns. But yeah, there's absolutely some patterns that just may not work, or someone doesn't have confidence in, right? Like I think about a good buddy of mine back home. He's got this one spoon. I think it's a Sexy Veggie spoon, it's called. He swears by that spoon. He catches all kinds of great kings. I have never caught a fish in that spoon, no matter how many times I put it out.
That goes back to the question about the spoons and how they could change, and this whole kind of dynamic of, I have flashers on my boat that, Casey or somebody will swear by it, and, I got the same fly behind it. I got the same gig going on, and I'm like, this thing sucks, okay? I just can't. It just doesn't work for me. And then, like, why spoons get hot and why they're not sometimes is another, we're not really sure. It's good that we don't know.
Yeah.
It's probably good, right? It keeps it a little bit of a mystery, the whole thing. And then why Chris can catch them on that and why I can't.
Well, even last year's stud pattern may be a complete dud next year.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's good for tackle people, though.
Yeah.
Right? You got to keep creating new things, maybe.
Yeah.
So how was your fishing on the North Shore last year? Would you rate it on average?
When it was really good, it was amazing. When it wasn't, it wasn't.
It was
bad. I would honestly, I had a great season from a charter perspective. Very fortunate. I work with a bunch of great captains out of the Bluffers Marina. Well, Pete, you've been there many times. Work with great captains. We stay on fish. Plus, I've got a father who's retired and fishes every day for fun. So if I'm not in the water, someone's feeding me intel. Every day I'm looking at what's the wind's doing, what the temps are doing. We stayed on it. It was good. I'd say I feel like 2022 was a smaller year for us from a fish size perspective.
Yes. Same
But, when I say it was good, like, 35, 40 fish, 5-hour trips. But then what we noticed,
great,
that was amazing.
That's actually great. Yeah.
But then when it was bad, it was because, typically it's, and you use these words a lot, it's the ice cold death water. That wasn't last year. Last year was the soup.
Yeah,
last year it was so warm. Like there was probably 2-3 weeks where, like, if you weren't going to put your riggers down below 120 and your diver and, clip on mag divers with extra weight and a 400 or 500 copper, you weren't going to catch fish.
Yeah, that's
right.
That makes it tough.
And that's tough, especially, when you're running a charter boat, you're trying to get a nice spread out there and you're stuck with maybe a 6-rod spread because otherwise it's tangle fest. Right. So we went through a lot of that last year. I'd say, for the recreational guys, I think it was tough because I know there's a few guys I helped out last year. They didn't have a mag diver in their box. It was like, here, take this. Your standard diver is just not going to get deep enough. So we had that for about 3 weeks last year. For some reason, the last 2 years, we've got a big tournament. The tournament, the King of Kings in the summer. Terrible fishing, absolutely terrible fishing. But that separates the men from the boys. You got fine fish. I think the challenge has been when you've got the tough fishing, you've got a big tournament, but you're also running charters. You're then going out to the blue zone trying to pick up the steelhead or rainbows, the cohos for the customers. You're not necessarily getting the intel you need for tournaments. So that was a bit of a catch-22. You know, you want to be able to work, but you want the intel for your tournament, and that's where you kind of pick one. But overall, it was a great season. Huge co-hosts. So that was nice. You know, for me, when I'm taking customers out, there's nothing better if I'm going out deeper and, you know, picking up, you know, 14, 15 pound cohos on a spoon. That's a lot of fun. You know, they're not fighting a ton of gear. So yeah, it was an okay season. I'd say I consider it a good season because I think I was on the water so much with a great network.
But the average guy,
it was tough.
Had a tough year.
It was a really tough season
for the most part too. The average guy, the weekend guy or the guy that comes up twice a month, really wasn't dialed in. No. So it's a huge disadvantage. For them. And
it is, and it's funny. You know, when I first started, every time I do and I think you do something similar. Every time I do a trip, I do a fishing report at the end of the day, and it's my way of almost keeping my own personal log, but I do it through YouTube. And when I first started, guys would give me a bit of grief, and I said, like, come on, we've all been there. Like, I'm trying to help these guys out that are recreational fishermen, and you know, I said, you never know when, even as a charter guy, I'm having a hard time. But the rec guy that I've helped out is actually hitting them hard, and he's gonna send me a text, and that happens.
Yeah, there's a difference between a fishing report that becomes a brag report. Right. I got my 12 and I'm done at 9:30, and there's no information.
No.
Right? Versus I got my 12 at 9:30, and this is what we use. It's kind of, maybe not exactly the word, but they were on this today for us, and I think maybe it is a little bit of brag report because you want to know that separates you from the rest, which is okay. You earned it. You know, but it's not a total brag report. But as long as you can throw those guys some bones, I think forget about what the other people say.
Yeah, no, and now it's cool. Like I tell you, like the guys we talk. Everyone's cool about it, and it's helping people out because I think it's good for the fish.
Yeah, you have a lot of good videos and information on your stuff. I see it. So
yeah, I think it's actually really good to hear that fishing report and to hear from you and what you did when it's a grind.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go out there and you're banging them up in 2 or 3 hours, I mean, I don't want to say anybody, but a lot of people can go out and catch them when it's like that. So tell me how you're catching them when it's tough. And that's, I think, what people really want to know because, you know, a really good rec angler can go out there when the bite is just smoking hot. Yeah. They're going to do great. But what they want to know is what to do when things are tough.
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest tip I've shared with guys is you know, when we think about Toronto, we got this section called the drop. It's a huge drop off where it goes from, you know, call it 60, 80 feet to like 150 in a snap of a fingers. So guys love to troll that. When it's on, it's on. When it's off, it's dead water. And so I think the one thing I've probably helped a lot of guys with is actually getting over the fear of turning their boat south and actually trolling out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, trolling out and, you know, not powering up. It's just turning that boat and trolling out and running your spread, and because you can often pick up kings in 250 and 300 and then just keep working it out, and then they start getting into coho and steelhead. I think back to when I had my 7-foot aluminum, I would never go out there because I was scared, thinking it was something crazy out there. It's just water. Yeah. It's just water.
A little deeper.
Yeah, just a little deeper. Away, you know, but as I say to them, make sure you tell someone you're going out there, have your radio on, have your cell phone, and go enjoy, because you can actually find fish, because who wants to keep going back and forth in the same water?
One of the other things that you have to contend with is out of Bluffers, I mean, it's Toronto. I mean, it's a busy port. There's a lot of traffic, especially if you think you're going to go out and run a 500 or something like that. Like, it's tough. There's a lot of traffic. So how do you navigate that, especially when we start talking about, you know, all these rec anglers are out there on the weekend, and it gets busy out there. And that's a challenge that maybe people don't face so much, like in a place like Wilson or Alcott, that you're facing every day out of Toronto.
And then you have the armada sailboats to contend with.
I was waiting for that.
But there is a lot of sailboats on those days.
I'm not gonna lie. Some days it's you pull your hair out. I'd say honestly so we've got the major highway in Toronto is called the 401 highway. I joke like it's worse than that highway in rush hour on a weekend on this section of water. So you've both nailed it. We have to adapt. So like, honestly, you know, if I'm running a charter on a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, or even after Saturday or Sunday afternoon, I'll start out on that drop early morning, but I'm running a light spread. I'm running 4 or 5 rods. I'm trying to get those nice big kings early, get those hits while I can. I'm fighting with boats getting pushed around. It is what it is.
Yep.
You know, you get a decent box. You know, you got some nice kings. I'll start to push out into deeper water. There's still fish in the deeper water, or I'll push into shallower water. Typically, I like to go deeper, and then, you know, if worst case, I get the customer a mixed bag, and they're happy. But, you know, last year, you know, anyone on social media would probably on the Canadian side would know that last year was a bit of a gong show with the amount of charter boats and big boats that were losing gear. You know, boats cutting in behind, and even wreck anglers having boats cut in behind. No one wants to lose gear. You get a you know, a copper or weighted steel cut off. There's $150 gone like that, right? And the time to put it together. It
just disrupts your whole day. Like the mojo goes, everybody gets mad. It is really. It just ruins the day when you have these events that happen.
And especially when you got customers on the boat.
The whole thing just is like, you just want to quit. You just want to go in. You're just like, it's a day changer, really.
You know, I know you're absolutely right, Pete. Like, I remember for years, it used to be like, put your big boards out, you know, kind of blocks. That doesn't work. You know, don't. Like, so for me, when it's busy, I'm running, I run the Ninja boards, right? Because I whip them in and out super quick. Right. You know, I can let them out wider. I need to bring them in because the boat's really close. I can bring them within 5-6 feet of the boat. So
that's a good idea.
It's adjusting to the day. Would I rather run my Big John Otter boats every day of the week? But that doesn't work on the weekend. Right. So yeah.
Well, thanks, Mark, for stopping by. If people want to know more about you, I've got your website for your charter up there. It's kingslandingsportfishing.com. Pete talked about too. You have an awesome YouTube channel. Where you really go through and just do a lot of just, hey, let me show you how this product works. And you really get into the kind of the nitty gritty and how things work. You do your reports on there as well. So if people that are up in the Toronto area want to know what's going on that water, they get it all the time. But then you've got your product we talked about right at the beginning as well. Yep. And that's going to be ProjectSalmon.ca.
Absolutely. And I'd say, you know, before COVID, used to get lots of Americans come spend a week or two on the Canadian side and fish the Canadian water. I highly, you know, Pete, you've done it many times. Highly recommend it. It's a great fishery. Come across the lake. It's pretty easy to do, either by boat or by car. It's a cool fishery.
Yeah, we hope to come back and see you this summer.
Yeah, I hope so.
Now that's COVID things behind us and all that.
Definitely.
So we hope to come over.
Time to compete.
Mark, appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you,
Mark. Good seeing you.
See you later, Pete.
Okay.